Good evening and welcome to the Melbourne School of Engineering Melbourne Transport Forum for tonight. My name's Mark Cassidy. I'm the Dean of the Melbourne School of Engineering. It's wonderful to see pretty much nearly a full room. I was sort of concerned that with all the new transport infrastructure going on, that people would be late. They would be stuck in traffic or miss their bus. But however you got to campus tonight, whether you caught a train or you got the bus, or like me, you walked, you took a unicycle, you asked your mum for a lift, or you took one of our autonomous buses here at the University of Melbourne. However you got here, welcome to the campus. We always love having our friends and our alumni and our industry partners and our community partners onto campus, so welcome. So, as I said, I've only sort of 7 weeks into the job here as the Dean of Melbourne School of Engineering. I'm very excited to be here. One of the reasons I've come from Western Australia, because of the wonderful vision that we have to engage more with the industry and partners that we have. And one of the real sort of jewels that we've got is in the transport area. So we're very proud, Melbourne School of Engineering is very proud of the AEMS, the Australian Integrated Multimodal Ecosystem. And I'm very proud of how it's engaging with the communities that we serve. And I think it's a great example for us all of what we can achieve through academia, industry, government, collaborations for the betterment of our society. So as you know, we're here for the Melbourne Transport Forum, Connectivity, the Future of Transport. So we're pleased to host this event, but we also acknowledge that, and we're very pleased that it's also part of the Victorian State Government's Digital Innovation Festival. And that's focusing on highlighting this state's leading technology capabilities. So this is just one showcase event from over 400 events that are taking place over the past 2 weeks across Melbourne and regional areas. So as advertised in the flyers and the website for this event, there will be soon over 3 billion people using connected devices and more than 210 billion sensors in the world, providing an unprecedented opportunity to tackle complex problems, including the complex transport issues and urban mobility challenges that we have in modern cities. The availability of live data, low-price accessible technology and connectivity of transport systems to travellers represents this wonderful opportunity. And so tonight, to talk about that opportunity and what we can do, we've assembled a group of experts from government, industry and academia to discuss this innovation in mobility and how we're working together towards a more connected transport system that will ease congestion, promote safety, and enhance sustainability in our society. So it's probably enough for me, so I'm just the MC, but we've got a more able person in the transport area than a geotechnical engineer in Scott Benjamin will lead the discussion, and Scott's a technical director of the Intelligent Transport at WSP. And we've got 4 panellists, starting as we go from left to right. Claire Imre, who's Associate Director, Program Strategy, Department of Economic Development, Jobs, Transport and Resources. Next is Anita Kuno, from Executive Director, Access and Operations at Vic Roads. And David Bonn, Senior Solutions Architect from Cubic. And right on the end is Professor Majid Savi, who's the Chair in Transport Engineering and Director of AEMS and Project Director of Transport Technologies here at the University of Melbourne. So welcome to the panel, and I'll hand over to Scott.
Thanks very much, Dean Cassidy. And just on behalf of the panellists, just like to thank Melbourne University for putting on this evening's event. Academia is extremely important in the equation and everything we're discussing tonight, and we'll hear more from Majid. Tonight I hope we're able to cut through anything technical. We really want to get to the heart of what's important in this conversation, and that is people, communities, the transport users. So if anyone uses any crazy acronyms, throw up your hands. Other than that, we're going to be running a fairly tightly moderated discussion for the first 30 minutes approximately, and then we'll gradually open up to the floor. We'll signal when we do that. We've got roving mics. As Dean Cassidy mentioned, that'll be filmed. It's really important that we hear those questions clearly. When you ask a question, just state your name and, if appropriate, the organisation. But keep a lookout for that. So the first 30 minutes or so, we'll run through this moderated discussion. So what's really important, I think, in introduction is just for each of us to introduce your organisation's role and what you see as the goal of your organisation and what you're trying to achieve in terms of future transport. So on behalf of WSP, I'd say exactly for us, the mix of the things we have here in the panel and the groups we have here, and seeking to interact and learn. Generally, I think this panel is a good subset of what we're trying to do out in the real world today. And I'll hand over to Claire Inray to begin by answering that first question.
Thank you, Scott. I was introduced as being from the Department of Economic Development, Jobs, Transport and Resources. I'm from the transport arm, which is more commonly, well, hopefully more commonly known as Transport for Victoria. And like any state transport organisation, our role is to really integrate the transport network for safer, quicker and simpler journeys that connect people and support Victoria's prosperity and livability. Obviously, the safer, quicker and simpler are, standard objectives that any transport network's trying to achieve. They're in our Transport Integration Act. But really, the latter ones are what we call outcomes, and it's really us trying to think about it as what's the impact transport can actually have on the community. So we talk about, rather than just are the trains on time, we talk about what that reliability means to productivity and reliable journeys. So we've got 3 outcomes, which is Victoria connects people and places, so maximises access to jobs, housing, recreation, social activity, those types of things. Also, there's we minimise barriers to accessing the transport network, so it's open to all. You've got Victoria. The second outcome is Victoria is a thriving place to live and do business. So we're talking about freight movements and how we improve those, and also, as I said, more reliable travel times. And then Victoria, I should say, is a place to people want to live. So we have safe transport and or environmentally friendly transport, or the experience that people have with their transport system is positive. And we're really looking at how we can leverage technology to meet those or achieve those objectives, and also deliver and improve on those outcomes, and not just the technology for technology's sake, not jumping on board with the technology because it's the latest thing and everyone loves it. It's actually understanding how they impact those outcomes and how we can get the right balance. We might find a technology, might reduce congestion, but it might have a negative impact on safety. So we really need to try and find that balance in our outcomes.
Thanks a lot, Claire. And Anita, just your organisation's role and on that point.
VicRoads has been through a bit of change lately, and one of the changes that we've had at VicRoads is that our Major Projects Division has become its own organisation, the Major Road Projects Authority. And as a result of that, the parts of VicRoads that remain are the operating parts of our business, the parts of our business that provide registration licensing services, and the parts of our business that look after our asset. We still deliver improvement projects as well. But it's a really interesting time for us because it gives us an opportunity to sort of say, well, if that's our main reason for being, then who is in the middle of all that? It's the user. So how is VicRoads providing services that are meeting the needs of the user? And that's consistent with the broader Transport for Victoria vision that Claire was just outlining. And so VicRoads plays a really important part of the overall integrated family, if you like, of transport partners. And our role as the road authority is not about moving cars and trucks, which is often how it's envisaged. It's about moving people and goods. And so we do that on a whole lot of modes, accessing the road network, and making better use of the asset that we have is a really important part of what we do. And in some places, that might be about providing priority for higher occupancy vehicles rather than providing everyone equal access to the whole road space and time. So we have a number of strategies that help us to think about how we allocate space and time. But I wanted to reflect a little bit on the role that technology plays in what we do. And one of the things that technology does is it actually changes the starting point. So it's about technology is changing the way people are travelling in the first place. It's changing the way people are making decisions about travel, and it's changing the access to information that people have. And so right at the beginning, the modes that people use might be different because of technology. So therefore we have to adapt. We have to be agile and dynamic in responding to what we're seeing in the environment around us. But along the way, technology also has a role in making us do our job better. So better information about how the transport system is being used will help us to make better decisions that can be user-centric. Better control systems that help us to put better traffic signal operations and manage motorways and all sorts of things can help us to actually make better use of the asset. And so technology is not only an input, it's also something that we use to help get some of the outcomes that we're seeking. And then finally, technology has its role in the everyday for the user as part of the actual day-to-day use of the system. And so people can access better information, can receive information about incidents that are occurring on the system. And so there's a lot of things at that end of the spectrum as well where technology is harnessed. And so it's really both responding to and harnessing technology that's what our remit is. We also just want to mention briefly, have a really strong remit around safety. And road safety outcomes are really important to us, and technology plays a really significant role in delivering on safety outcomes. The safe system that we use talks about the role of vehicles, safer road users, safer roads and roadsides, and safer speeds. And technology plays a role in all of those and in the interaction of those with one another. And so that's another area that is really important to us at Vic Roads to make all of our decisions framed around achieving a safe system outcome.
Thanks, Anita. On to David. Your view of Cubic's role and goals as an organisation.
So I work with Cubic Transportation here in Sydney. We can tell by the accent I'm not a local. But it's interesting, the challenges that we're set in the transport domain here in Sydney and in Melbourne, Brisbane, all around Australia, is exactly the same as we find around the rest of the globe. Good news is when I come here and find out how you guys are doing it, I can take it back to other parts as good ideas. But it also means that we can bring ideas from other parts of the world down here to Australia as well. So Cubic's very much involved in the movement of people, smart card main that they've been working in Australia for a long time up in Sydney. Down to simple things like when you go to the metro or the railway station, there's a barrier. You have to put your ticket on the barrier, you have to wait for that barrier to open, and then you can walk through. All of that takes a very small amount of time to achieve. Well, if you think about it, if you've got 2,500 people standing in a queue, all the little bits of time add up to, in effect, wasted productivity. One of the things that we're looking at in the way we're using new technology today to try and improve the passenger experience is look at where there are blockages, look at where we can actually make it more efficient for the movement of people and actually do away with the gates. There's other technologies coming along that we can actually deploy that allows us to get people through those gates, get them to the train. It's about knowing where to stand on the platform. Nothing worse coming in, standing there in the morning, faced with a jam-packed carriage. Well, perhaps we can tell you where to stand on the platform. A lot of the work that we're doing in Cubic and is done by many other companies is looking at the passenger experience, focusing on what can be done, what we can measure, how we can get the information out to the individuals to actually make their journey far more pleasant. We have to do it, so let's make it as effective as we can. If we can give you some facilities on the transport that allow you to do other things, whether it's I noticed in the local press there was comments about making sending emails while travelling counted as work time. Does sending emails while in bed count as work time as well? So there's lots of things that we can do that we can make a difference. And I think, as we've heard, the information side of things is going to be huge.
Thanks, David. On to Majid.
It's very hard to be the last because all the good point is taken. So I provided a few slides to tell you basically what we do at Melbourne University. We put together a vision for a transport technology program, which is basically looking at the whole transport system, infrastructure, people moving in it, all the modes. And as you can see, it's a bit different from traditional transportation research. So we have a core which is talking about transportation problem, but we have also lots of enablers around us, from computer engineering, electrical engineering, and so on, infrastructure. So holistically, we're looking at the problem that we're all facing. And as a flagship for this transport technology program, we would like to be one of the best in the world, basically top 5 in the world, and the best in Australia. So in order to do that, we started to develop a program called AEMS, as the Dean mentioned. This is called AEMS, and it's pretty much a big chunk of the Melbourne city is allocated to this project. And we are looking at all of the real world problems and looking at them as they unfold. So basically, this is a snapshot of the area. Is right next to Melbourne University, going all the way to Huddle Street. It has all kind of problem that you would like to have in transport a system. We have freight, we have bus, we have trams, we have people walking around. Lots of people cycling in this area. And we also have Eastern Freeway. So you have the possibility of looking at, for example, if anybody is interested in connected vehicle, what does it mean if you're coming from a very high speed environment, such as Eastern Freeway, to a very low speed environment? Can your technology or your sort of a solution that you put forward can handle this kind of, changes? So, and that's the attractiveness of this ecosystem, because it's real and because it's complex. If you can manage to provide a solution in this environment, then you can pretty much have some confidence in it that is scalable to the whole city. And this is just our partners in this slide. Is not to impress you. It's basically, it is to impress you, by the way, but but it is also to show you how complex it is to pull together such a thing. And it's a true partnership with government, industry, from many different type of industry that you wouldn't imagine to see in a transport project, and university as well. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Majid. So we'll continue that discussion. So we've spoken about from each of the organisation the goals, which are often a little further into the future. But what are you hoping to do tomorrow? What are your immediate activities that you're hoping to move on with in the next few months that are a step towards those goals?
That's a very good question, Scott. So again, if you go back to the core of your question, first question, and also the second question, if you look at the transport system, the analogy I use is that transport system is like a mobile phone you had in your pocket 10 years ago. If we want to bring it to become the mobile phone you have in your hand today, connected, smart, and then people can come, government can come, industry can come, and they can build up enormous number of applications. One application could be, better journey information. One application could be better safety for vulnerable road users. So that's our ambitious goal, and what we would like to put together in the next 12 months is to bring what you saw on the slide, to reality. We have this basic connectivity happening in this transport system across all the modes, and also across a different infrastructure, and that's basically a very important functionality that we are hoping to have in the next 12 months.
Thanks, Majid. Dave, target for the next 12 months?
Vic's background, my background is really in transport management. So the thing I want to see happen in the nearer future is that we focus more on demand responsive transport systems, rather than perhaps running buses, trams, trains to fixed timetables. Maybe we run them as and when they're demanded, and when the users want them to be at particular bus stops. All seen buses run with no passengers in them? Why? Is there a different way we can run the bus network? Or a bus operator? I just hope that there's a way that the demand management can be achieved to make it more customer focused. And to do that, what we need to do is better understand demand. We need to know where the users are. But it's not the fact that the users are always creatures of habit. A lot of things happen on the transport network on a daily basis that we can't predict. Whether it's the weather, whether it's a breakdown, whatever it is. So one of the things that we need to do, and where we see the AEMS testbed helping us, is our ability to measure demand. Actually find out, because something else has happened, we now have 10 people standing at that bus stop. Usually we only have 2. Actually, the bus that's coming along has only got 6 seats. What do we do about that mismatch? Demand versus capacity. So for me, it's about understanding how people react, being able to measure the demand, but also to measure people's responses. So, do people take this route, that route, or a different route when things happen? You're not, unfortunately, you don't operate like robots. There's always an unpredictable element to humans. Sometimes that makes demand management a little bit challenging. So if I could get to the point where we better understood, or in some ways provided people with information that gave them a more predictable response.
Thanks, Dave. On to Anita. Immediate steps.
It's interesting, just thinking about the demand management area, that disruptions planning is a really significant function that VicRoads is a part of across the portfolio. Again, we already had mentioned in the introductory comments the big construction programs that are around Melbourne at the moment. And that has an impact on users in their day-to-day, and one of the key elements of that is actually thinking about what are the messages we ask people to take on when they're making the decision whether to even travel. So it's really going right back to the do I really even need to make the trip, let alone what mode or route or time I'm going to take it. So it's a very interesting area, and we're quite immersed in that. Another area that is a priority over the next 6 to 12 months is getting a better understanding. It's not working. Oh, okay. Getting a better understanding of the way our customers think, and doing some market research to really get some better understanding of the way our customers think about their use of the network, and how what technologies they would like to be able to access in order to use the network, and what information they want as they go about that. Another area is yesterday we actually had new regulations were made, and these regulations are allowing automated vehicle trials, and the regulations will be administered by VicRoads, and people from the 28th of September, organisations that want to test an automated vehicle will be able to receive a permit from VicRoads and meet certain conditions, and actually operate a vehicle that is more automated than what we have permitted in the past. So that's a really immediate one, and we're really excited about the opportunities that might create for us. And another area is about establishing really clear measures that will help us to track how we're performing, how we're operating the network, and how we're achieving the outcomes that the community are looking for from us, and being accountable in that is another priority at the moment.
Thanks, Anita. Back to Claire, your immediate.
So kind of two key areas for us, for my area in particular, really working with industry and also research institutions to explore technologies, but their specific or potentially specific applications in a transport context. And that's through a number of channels. Marge had mentioned AEMS earlier, and also the iMove Collaborative Research Centre, which is an initiative where multiple organisations can get together and bring different skill sets to solve a problem and deliver a project with pre-agreed outcomes and outputs. Secondly, it's really going back to the user point that Anita spoke about earlier. We understand at a macro level how the users use our network. We have MyKey that tell us, where they touch on, where they touch off. We've got origin, destination modelling and whatnot. But we're really looking to understand how more personal connected devices can really tell us more about our users. How they travel within stations, where the overcrowding is, which carriage of the train they're on, so we can get a much more, as I said, micro level of understanding. We're looking at Wi-Fi, what Wi-Fi can tell us. I don't know if this is a swear word here, but Monash Uni recently did a trial at Richmond University, and that follows another trial that's been done on a much broader scale in Transport for London. I was there the other week. Also, not just looking at the pure, when people travel, where people travel, but the why. As Anita also mentioned, really unpicking the why. And we've involved in a study at the moment where people can download a mobility app and record. It monitors their journey, but they go in and make trip journals. They can tell us why they took it, what the purpose of the trip was, why they made the decision of which mode to take, and how they found it as well, what they thought about it. There are some gaps in that. We're looking to use AI to fill those gaps. And then the ones with interesting travel patterns, we're actually bringing into interview and kind of unpick a bit more about the why. So we might turn up some interesting results from that. But and really start to not just look at the numbers, to actually humanise the data and get that qualitative layer over the top. We've just completed a MyKey mobile trial. So using your mobile phone, a digital version of your MyKey. So we'll be looking at the findings of that and really where to from here. So that's some of the most immediate areas that we're looking at.
Great, thanks, Claire. You mentioned the importance of obviously research organisations working with industry, understanding the user. We talk a lot about collaboration in this space. How do we get real collaboration between those three groups? If we say public, private sector, or academia, we'll add a few more, and the end users, how do we get something meaningful out of that collaboration?
So, it's a good question. Collaboration is quite a popular word, isn't it? I think the one of the traps we fall into with collaboration is thinking that turning up and just being there is collaboration. And I'll admit it, I've done that. I'm in the room, I'm there, I'm collaborating. I think we really need to be open about what we can bring to the table and what we also would like to get from the collaboration, the partnership. I mean, I understand that with these things and partnerships, you often don't know exactly where you're going to land. It's a bit more iterative and agile, but at least have a think about what you're seeking from it and have an open and transparent conversation about the value that you think you can bring. And also a two-way conversation about that value, because you might think that's valuable, but the others might not, and that's not a bad thing or a negative. It's just having that open conversation up front so everyone's kind of across, yep, this is what they can bring, and obviously, as I said, things can develop over time, but it's that setting that expectation up front. And in that value kind of conversation, I think, particularly as a government, we need to diversify our thinking of what constitutes value. So it's not just funding support that's valuable. We have other things that might be valuable. So we have network access, we have a customer base, we have brands that people know about and trust to a certain degree. They, when you get on a bus or a tram or a train, those brands have that knowledge, or not knowledge, have that market presence already. It was interesting, I was speaking to someone the other day who was involved in on-demand bus services, and they said they were really, one of the findings was that the amount of people that pay cash, and they were quite surprised at that, and we were talking about it, and they were like, yeah, we think they just, because they don't recognise the company, they're not quite comfortable giving, handing over their cards. So it's things like that, and also for a government as well, looking at our procurement and working out how we can apply the same procurement principles of value for money, fairness, to both the standard type procurement goods service where we know what we want and we go to market for it, but applying those same kind of principles to more collaboration and partnership kind of approaches.
Thanks, Claire. Anita, your thoughts?
Yeah, great place for Claire to stop, and I can pick up on the same theme. So the way we go about procurement in government, and the way that we have always done that when we're procuring more traditional services and goods from contractors, doesn't necessarily work in the space that we're in now. So what do we need to do to adapt our procurement processes to actually allow us to be more agile and to have those long-term partnerships? What does that look like? How do we make sure that we still protect the state's interests in that, but encourage innovation and the best of what can be brought to our challenges that we're facing by our private sector partners? Another example of collaboration has been around for a long time in the Victorian state context, and that's in our road safety partnership. Our road safety partnership is across 5-6 different agencies, and we also have partnerships with academia, and in fact the road safety partners are quite involved in the AEMS project as well. And there's a real opportunity there for us to think about some of the key road safety challenges in the urban context that we haven't actually been able to crack the nut of. And a good example of that is the pedestrian and heavy vehicle or even light vehicle interactions, and how do we actually find ways, is technology part of the solution in actually helping us to limit the number of serious injuries and fatalities that result from those interactions. And this testbed is a fantastic place for us to start thinking about some of that. We've seen a reduction in our road toll in other areas, but these vulnerable road users are not going down. So we need to work out how to tackle that. So that's a really interesting, starts with government, but actually it's not limited to. It needs to be a broader conversation and bringing in innovation that might not otherwise be able to be achieved. So I'll leave it there.
Thanks, Anita. David, your thoughts on meaningful collaboration?
It's interesting because I guess I'm sitting on the other side of the table from the clients on many occasions, arguing that collaboration is the only way we can possibly deliver this project. And by the way, could you put all your contractual terms and conditions to one side so that we could all get on and work together? I live in hope that one day, however. I guess one of the things that may actually help change the things is acceptance of failure. Is actually some of the things that in the environment we find ourselves in today, it changes at a vastly quicker rate than it has ever done in years gone by. We have a lot of very, very clever startups, SMEs out there. But a lot of the procurement approaches taken make it difficult, challenging, for those type of organisations to be part of the submission for a major tender. There are lots of initiatives that go out and they have to be applauded and encouraged. But I just think people like Cubic and other larger organisations that are tendering for contracts should pay a little bit more, get a little bit more involved in the clever ideas that are coming out of startup organisations. And I think that going back to the acceptance of failure, actually we never get things right 100% all the time. But if we can learn from what we do and share what we've done wrong and what we did to correct it, on a much more open basis than we've done for many years, I think that would actually help us be much more collaborative, getting towards the solutions we're looking for quicker.
Thanks, Dave. Majid?
Yeah, I would like to bring it back to the context of transport, what we discussed today. So when I put that slide up, you see a variety of companies. A lot of them are sort of, gigantic multinational companies, but again, they cannot do it alone because it doesn't matter how big you are, how much revenue you create. The transport problem or transport sort of, issues that we have are very multidisciplinary and requires really tight collaboration. And a lot of companies started, and government and university as well started to realize that. So in order to tackle that, we need meaningful collaboration, and by that the example that in our own sort of initiative, it was really a lot of dialogue to create a shared vision. Unless this vision is shared and valued by university, by industry, and government, is not going to go ahead. And I think that's a meaningful collaboration model when a vision is shared and basically also all the kudos is distributed. Equally or between partners. So that's a key. My experience.
Thanks, Majid. Just for all of you, just reflecting on those points of collaboration, we've spoken about transparency and making clear intent and your thoughts known about where you want to be, what you want to do as an organisation. So just for each of you to make a clear statement on one key challenge that you want to take up or one key issue you'd like to resolve. Starting again with you, Majid.
Oh yeah, I think in university, especially being in, for example, in Australia, so there are some challenges in terms of being away from, for example, a big technology hub like what is happening in US or Europe. And lots of the companies, such as, for example, Cubic, I don't pick up on David, but they have office here, but lots of them are sort of selling product rather than having big R&D. So for Australian University, in order to get to the R&D and get to basically the real core of innovation, it needs a little bit more effort, and basically that makes us stronger and more ambitious, which is in a way is sort of helping us to go for a bigger sort of target and bigger goals. So I think one of the, if I want to mention just one, I would imagine that if you have more proactive, highly, active technology companies would have been help. But again, we have to deal with that. It is what it is.
Thanks, Majid. So you're actually saying adversity is the positive to giving the outcome as well, which is great. And Dave, your thoughts on that? One key problem you'd like to solve, or challenge you'd like to take up?
For me, trying to deliver a service to individuals, I'd love individuals to let them know, for me to know where they are, where they're going to. Because I can deliver you a wonderful piece of information to get you home when things go wrong. But if I don't know where home is, and I don't know where you're standing, then I can't tell you how to get home. So for me, the future is most definitely going to be about personalised information provision. I don't want to put a broadcast message up on a sign that says, everybody go home via the train. Not really the best way to do it. However, you have to, and we have to demonstrate trust between ourselves and our customers, the users, such that you will allow us to know where you are, to know where you want to go to, and for us to use that information safely and securely for your benefit. If there's one thing that was really to make my life easier, delivering better customer service, it would be being able to know where somebody's trying to get.
Thanks, Dave. Anita?
I could say a lot of things at this point, but I'll just say one small thing, which is no surprises. We want to be in a position where our customers have no surprises about what they find when they're out there, that if they do encounter something they weren't expecting, that they can have immediate reassurance and assistance in navigating around it. So.
Thanks, Anita. Claire?
And mine's in the same vein. It's that providing, or not necessarily us providing, but ensuring that users get the right information that they need in a timely manner to make the travel choices they need to make. And it's reliant on, as David's point, we need to have a bit more of an idea of, on a personal level, what's going on, or a micro level, and it also leads to the no surprises. So it's all in the same kind of space.
That's great. Very good. So this is the point we can open to the floor. So we've got, I think, two people, one at the moment, roving mics. So just remember, put up your hand, draw our attention. We'll begin here. If you just state your name, your organisation, and try to, if everyone can just state clear questions, always more opportunity to discuss at the end. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Kelvin Munn. I am from Ford Australia of the Research and Development Department. My question to the panel is, you mentioned a lot about safety, improving Australian infrastructure and also the transport for the people. How, David mentioned about personalization, but my question to the panel is, what about privacy? Where do we draw the line here? I mean, especially with connected vehicles and autonomous vehicles coming out very soon.
I'll have a go at that. And one of the things that we're asking people in the market research that we're doing is actually what their appetite is around privacy. And it's a really important question for us. It's an important question for us because obviously there's a legal context, but my understanding is that the Australian context is not as strict necessarily as some of the European countries at the moment, and I think that's something we need to sort of understand a bit better. When it comes to the sort of safety assurance systems, if you like, that might sit around connected and automated vehicles, I think that there's a trade-off that people are going to have to make in terms of, well, if I'm wanting to use this, I have to agree, that there will be somebody who will be in receipt of that information. Now, that might not be the government. It might be a vehicle manufacturer or someone else that's providing those assurance services, and there's a lot of space between now and when we get to the point of really understanding what the right models are for that. But, it's an interesting area and a really challenging one.
I'll just reiterate that. It is the two-way dialogue. So when London did their trials around Wi-Fi, they engaged with the community. They didn't just say, we're using it for this, sign on, or say yes if you're in, or not, opt out, opt in, whatever. They actually did some consumer research and engaged with them to say, okay, this is what we're planning to do with it. How do you feel about that? What do you think is an acceptable way to use your data? What would you be willing, if this was what we're planning to use it for, what type of thing, what level of data would you be willing to let us have access to? And that two-way conversation, not a one-way of this is what we're doing, you can agree or disagree. I think there needs to be more of an open dialogue. I'm not saying that's easy and it'll suddenly happen, but I think it needs to be more in that vein than just this is it.
That's great. Thanks, Claire. We might move on to the next question over here if we've got the mic. Sorry. Yep. Comment?
Hello, my name is Ilse Cooper. I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Melbourne in engineering. I was just going to add to that about suggesting that the Productivity Commission report on data accessibility and use might give some insights about the legal implications of that as well.
Further questions from the floor? We've got two over here.
Competition.
And you two can figure that out between you. Jamie, sorry. Yeah.
Sorry, Jamie, you can go next.
I want my friend Henry to ask a question.
Thanks, Jamie. It's very kind. Henry O'Craglick, WSP. I just want to pick up the theme of collaboration. It seems to me that every jurisdiction in Australia is facing more or less the same transport problems, and yet every jurisdiction tackles it a completely different way. And I often wonder, why aren't there more collaboration? We're a country of 25 million people. Our two major cities seem to have completely different approaches to the way we tackle things. Some of you would have seen the recent announcement by Transport for New South Wales of the Integrated Congestion Management Program. That is one approach. Victoria's going down a completely different path. It just seems to me sometimes that we waste a lot of resources and a lot of time pursuing the same answers to the same problems in completely different ways. I'm just curious as to what people think of that.
You'd like to start on that one?
Well, as the guy who's delivering the ICMP programme, clearly that's the right way to go.
Yeah.
I'll refrain from answering it. It's probably politically correct.
Look, I think that there's probably more collaboration than you necessarily get to see. We really are talking to our partners interstate. We are seeking to understand how they're approaching similar issues that we have, and I think that there is a lot of opportunity there. I know even the AIMS testbed has interest from all around Australia, and so I think there are opportunities for us to learn from one another. We've done. in a lot of different areas. We've worked across Australia, so all the road authorities work together under AustRoads, and we have a common set of standards for our roads. We also have, as part of that, there's a connected automated vehicle program. So there's a lot of work happening across Australia in technical areas, and I think that there's a healthy sort of points of difference phase that we're in at the moment, and I think it's an interesting phase to be in, and I suspect at some point, there'll be a bit more convergence is my prediction.
In the more emerging kind of mobility and technology concept, I've seen a lot of development in our collaboration with other states, if you like. So we have recently released through iMove a project where we looked into the consumer perceptions or customer perceptions of mobility as a service, and that was a joint project between ourselves, New South Wales, WA, and a university in South Australia. And also I've got a conference call tomorrow with Transport for New South Wales on some of their on-demand trials. We're really sharing the learnings on those because, as you say, we are facing the same challenges. So do we do it perfectly? No. Are we trying to improve? Yes.
Okay. So, Jamie, you...
Yeah, thank you. Jamie from Telstra. Just reflecting back a couple of years ago, Roads Australia held a summit on connected and autonomous vehicle issues. And I'm not really particularly concerned about connected autonomous vehicles, but one of the things that came out of that was a realisation that technology is the easy part. There are plenty of clever people who can do great things with technology. Products are available or accessible or affordable. The hard part was getting the balance between the amount of regulation and the business models. And I guess I'm interested in how do we figure out what that balance is? How do we get that hard touch, light touch position right?
We have lots of different commissioners at the state level, at least, who are interested in how we go about things, and the Commissioner for Better Regulation is one of those. And whenever we consider things, putting together new regulations or sunsetting regulations are being reviewed, we actually have to go through a huge process of demonstrating to the community through a regulatory impact statement, why we've actually sought to regulate things. And it's a very healthy discipline because it helps us to have that conscious thought process about defining those impacts, and I think there's a real opportunity for those to be challenged during that process of putting a regulatory impact statement out there for public comment and industry comment. So I would encourage people to participate in that at the various points along the way.
Thanks, Anita. Dave, did you want to comment?
One of the things I would say as somebody who does work internationally is none of the challenges that you guys have got in Australia are unique to Australia. Everybody around the world in the connected and the autonomous vehicle space are all facing the same challenges. What I would recommend you do is when you're doing your deliberations is actually see what other people are doing as well and try and learn from the bits. Share your ideas, share your thoughts, and collaboratively, strangely enough, come up with an approach that is actually, I think, pretty much the same worldwide. But it does need you to reach out to other countries and actually share your thinking.
On that point, Majid, I mean, what do you feel for a university or for AIMS, in taking part in that? What do you see your role in that?
I would like to say that basically, if you look at this concept of connected automated vehicle and transport system as a whole, of course, there's a lot of hype about autonomous vehicle and regulation around it, and most of the conversation is around that. Whereas, with basically some of the project happening around Australia, including our AIMS, we showed that, connectivity is the key, basically for getting lots of productivity and efficiency out of the system. And pretty much that one doesn't need much regulation. Basically using the existing technology, but make it harmonized, coordinated, and starting thinking as a system rather than, particular mode. and that provides lots of benefits. And I think that we can start yesterday, so we don't have to wait for any regulation to come in and back it up.
Thanks, Majid. There's a question up the back here.
Graham Bond. I'm a humble public transport user and motorist. I also happen to be a project manager. I thought about the utilisation of public transport, or poor utilisation that was mentioned, and I've long wondered whether part of the problem is the fare structure. I'm old enough to remember when I would buy a cardboard ticket for a journey from point A to point B, or point A to point B and return. Now, it's not as granular as that, and yet we're no longer stuck with old manual systems. We've never had more computing power. I can get a list of all the journeys I've taken from point to point from Mikey. Why do we have the public transport fare structure that we have that operates to deter short journeys so that people hop in a car rather than take a short journey on a train because they're going to pay a similar fare to what I would pay to go from my suburb into the city?
You want to start on that one, Claire?
Yep.
Yeah.
So the fare structure was, developed at a time based on evidence and whatnot. Oh, sorry. Yes, I do. Apologies. The fare structure was developed based on the evidence at the time, and I think I can't talk about the why and what we could do going forward, not what we're going to do going forward, but I can certainly say, for me, it goes back to our better understanding of the user and the trips they make, and the why and the how can be used as an evidence base to change, improve our fare structure going forward at a time when we do come to look at it.
And although I'd say that's what Claire was talking about more generally earlier, the need for more data collection, and that's the point that's missing. Sorry, we'll take one last question in the middle here.
Yeah, hi, I'm Dan. I'm partnered with the strategic area of WSP, and I like what you guys are saying about the smaller steps that we're taking, the little things that we can do over the next 12 months. What I'm interested in, I'm also a member of the public and a motorist who struggles through traffic quite frequently. I'm interested in looking at how we can take the really large leaps, to channel one of the great pioneers of transport, Neil Armstrong. How can we take some of these giant leaps to go a long way into improving things rather than these smaller steps? And what's it going to take to, in my opinion, either improve driver training, which I think is one of the biggest issues, or take that away completely?
Who wants to start on that? Anita?
So one of the things that we're seeking to do with our use of the existing asset, so I'll sort of put aside construction of new assets because that's part of the solution that you're talking about, but once you've done that, or at the same time as doing that, making better use of our existing asset requires a sort of different thinking about, we were told not to use technical terms, but, traffic flow theory and how we actually organise ourselves to use the system. And on the motorway network, we've actually made some really significant gains in what we call the productivity of that asset by having the ramp meters that basically turn taps up and down depending on how much traffic's on the central carriageway, and that is also coordinated between ramps. And so it's given us quite an uplift in how that asset is used, and it's about continuing the flow rather than allowing flow breakdown to happen, because if you've ever seen a photo of a freeway with stationary traffic on it, you might think that that's full, but actually that's a very inefficient use of that asset. The best photo to see is one where all the vehicles are a couple of headways apart and you can't tell from a still, but they're actually all moving at speed limit. And that is the optimal way of operating that system to get more productivity from it. So we want to take that philosophy and say, what happens if you do that on the arterial network as well, which is a whole different ballgame because it's an open system and because there's so many different controls that you would need to have to do anything like what I just mentioned on the motorways. But the seed of that idea is there, and that is where we want to move longer term in use of the existing asset. Driver behaviour is part of that, and influencing people to make good decisions and not to be distracted while they're driving in particular is a really important area for us. And once again, technology will have a role. Education, enforcement, and engineering solutions are all part of that.
Thanks, Anita. And a quick comment, Dave. Yeah.
I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I don't think as somebody who delivers the systems to make the giant leaps for mankind, I'm not quite sure I've got one in my back pocket tonight. Because actually, if you look at if you're as old as me, and we're able to look back as what traffic and transport management was like over the years, if you look back 20 years to now, boy, is that a dramatic leap for mankind. The thing is, it's done in little stages, and it'll continue to get done in little stages. Those little stages will happen quicker, more of them in parallel. So yes, you will get to the point in a number of years' time where travelling and transport quite different to what we have today. It's kind of down to people like you to come up with the ideas and the ways to make it happen, please.
I would like us to mention that I think now that's the reason we have this forum here, and that's the reason so many people in here, because we are in that verge. Basically, that you're going to see a big improvement into the system if we do our sort of our job properly, and we basically being able to use all of this amazing technology that's coming in. So, for example, the connectivity. Have a chat with David and Scott before we come here. It's been around for 20 years, but never been mature enough to be implemented in the larger scale. We're getting to that level, and once that happens, you will see a revolution in many areas, including safety. Motorcycle is one of them. I know many companies don't want to mention the name, working on that, and it's going to be lots of opportunity. We just need to be ready and gearing up for that. And I think this is what we're collectively trying to do.
Thanks, Majid. That's a great way to end the session, and just to invite Dean Cassidy back to close. Thanks.
Oh, thanks very much, Scott, and that was just fantastic. Really exciting topic to be talking about tonight. So thank all of your contributions and to the panel as well. Look, I remember. I was a civil engineering student a while back, and I remember second year doing Transport 101. And we all got sent down to Coronation Drive in Brisbane for 3 hours to count. We count cars, trucks, motorbikes, and we'd all go back and work out whether that road was at capacity. And I think it's just an absolute. I'm not that old. There's an absolute demonstration about how quickly this field is moving. I think David had it right that we've got to accept failure because it's moving so quickly. It's sensors, it's human factors, it's privacy law, the big data. It's just absolutely fascinating topic, and what you can see from the passion here today is obviously so key to everyone as individuals. It's key to a society. It affects productivity, affects equity in society, it affects how we live, and anyone who's been stuck in traffic knows it affects how painful your day becomes. So it's a fantastic contribution by the panel and everyone. So just like if you could just join me in thanking Scott and Claire, Anita, David, we've got some gifts for you, which I think will come. The other, while the gifts are being handed out, I'll just say that the other thing that warms the heart of a Dean of Engineering is the embracing and passionate love for collaboration that was displayed tonight. I think that's what we're trying to achieve with AIMS and Majid, is to be collaborating. We feel like we're doing it now, but we can always do more. And in that spirit, just please note that there's a flyer in your seat for the Summit of Transport Safety in the Era of Digital Mobility, which is going to be held on the 1st of October. Lots of great keynote speakers and coming to talk. If you're interested in knowing more, there's some context on the back, or probably better still, just corner Majid tonight and get more details off him. So I hope you enjoyed this evening as much as I did. Thank you all for attending. I think most importantly, please have a safe journey back to your family and loved ones tonight. And with that, if you do have problems getting lost, I'm sure David's going to take a phone call and tell you how to get there. Thank you very much.